Well, hey everybody, welcome to our next video in our viewer question and answer series where a viewer gets to ask me 3 questions about the business, about me, whatever they'd like to ask me. So we are today with Michelle in Maryland, where my husband's favorite crab cakes are in Maryland. He's obsessed with these crab cakes from Maryland. He had once. We had to ship them back here. I don't even know, but crab cakes. Who knew? Who knew? He's obsessed. So, and you we were talking, have worked in a variety of different areas, and you work now in logistics for a company. And you worked in hospice as a volunteer for a while, and in teaching and education. So you have a lot of different areas that you have information background from, which is really interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So tell me, what is your first question?
Okay. My first question has to do in a way with what we did with my father when he passed. Since he'd been in the funeral industry, we had talked all along, many years about, well, what would you do? And this is what he wanted. So what we decided, this is what he decided, that we would not get him embalmed. He would be cremated. And so we went to see the guy that owns the funeral home that was a former colleague of his when he had worked in the funeral industry. And we said, well, we don't want Daddy cremated, but we do want you to do whatever you've got to do to make him up. So he passed on a Monday, and he was shown on Tuesday, and his funeral before cremation was Wednesday. So he goes, well, okay. And so my question is when we told him to cosmetically do what you must, what are the things that he actually probably did do? Because I know everything they do. But what do you think they did? I mean, if he was embalmed, I know he had makeup and his hair was done and everything. He looked great. But what do you think preparation-wise they probably did?
I would say, first of all, can you hear lawn mowing?
No.
Okay. My neighbor just decided to start mowing the yard outside the window. So I just want to make sure it's not coming across to you when I'm answering and talking. So I would expect that he may have done a little tint just to kind of make sure his color was balanced. Typically, the first 2 days, there's a little bit of settling of the blood, and so the person just gets a little pale. So I find that those are the best days to do viewing without embalming, because it's more of just a pale color rather than starting to get blotchy and purples and things that kind of come after that. So usually what I would do is a little bit of maybe tint and a little lip color. I would close the eyes, eye caps, glue the eyelids, close the mouth, set the features, and that would be about it. So very simple, minimal, because the person's skin kind of gets this, I've talked about it before, it's almost like a tackiness to it sometimes, like a sticky. So the more you cosmetize, it doesn't go on as smoothly a lot of times because it's this weird texture, especially if they've been in the cooler, come out. So I usually would do a minimum. I mean, if there was bruising, if there was discoloration, I would try to do more, but I would go pretty simple. And then the lights are very forgiving often at a funeral home if you use the cosmetic lighting and such. So very minimal might need to be used during those first 2 days, which is good. And that,
do you think they would have had to probably throw car or anything like that? I was wondering.
Unless you authorized it, they should not be aspirating.
Okay.
Some funeral homes, I will say though, if a lot of pressure has built up, they will aspirate and just try and get out a little bit of the gas, because that's where that gas builds up first. And if that gas is building up, there's a larger chance that it's going to push up and out the nose and mouth. So then you've got purge whenever it might happen, unfortunately, during viewing or during the funeral, if the person, is being viewed by a group. And so some people will do that aspiration just to get that pressure out. So they may not put anything back in, because if the family hasn't authorized it, you shouldn't be introducing internally chemicals. but just taking gas out is not embalming or preserving, because embalming is the application of powders or fluids for preservation reasons. So aspirating without re-injecting is, it's kind of a gray area depending, who you talk to, if it's okay or not. But
right. Well, that was interesting. I was always wondering about that because, we talked, but we just kept it very on the surface because he knew we knew everything. But
yeah, and most people, as long as you are getting that end result, don't worry about those little things behind the scenes. It's kind of like embalming. We want the end result, but we don't need to hear every little thing about what you're doing to my loved one. And
yeah, that's true. It's best,
yeah.
even though we've known everything.
Right.
Let's see here. I had another one. Let's see. I didn't know what to ask. I was just watching one of your other videos about, you were talking about caskets and the different grades, and I guess on the inside they're probably all pretty much the same. But I was going to ask it in this light. This is sort of funny. Have you ever laid down in a casket?
I have not. So that's kind of hopefully coming up in a video I'm going to be. So I really take to point the law that a casket should not be used by more than one individual. Like the interior should not touch any two individuals. You're not to reuse. And I think, to me, I believe that's even for a living person. So I know there's funeral directors who will hop in and take, check it out and take a picture or do whatever they do. But I've just always found that was, not okay. Like, so thought about doing a live, like one of my live videos, do it from a casket, like lay in a casket and do my live, but I would lay down a sheet. So I'm not touching the interior and such, kind of like when I lay on the prep table, I always put something down. And to me, that's just abiding by the law and respecting and such. But no, I've never gotten in a casket. I think it's interesting though. It's, laying on the prep table was very surreal enough. So I feel like getting in a casket, it's like, oh, how many of the steps am I going to go through before I actually go through them?
Yeah, really. That would be, well, I must admit that I have laid in one. Yeah. And I had lost a boyfriend that we were dating, and he drank, and it had upset me. So he was just 31, and I wanted to know if he was comfortable. Now I know that was a dumb thing for me to wonder, but
not at all.
I got to the room and actually got in one that looked like the one he was in, and I laid down. It was just like a couch. If you think about it, that's what they call them, as couches. Right. It's just on a couch, except for when you try to start to shut the lid.
Yes, that's a bit much. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting you say that, because in videos I talk about, it looks more comfortable or it is more comfortable, and people will comment in those videos, who cares? Like, what does it matter? They're not feeling it. And I'm like, but it's the perception of the family. Like, I want socks on a dead person because I feel their feet will be cold because they're, cold. Like, it is all about perception of what we feel that we would think when we were alive is what they were feel. And we want them to be comfortable, and we want them to be cozy, and we want them to, not look like they're, in clothes that aren't right or, and everything. It's just perception, and it's an added comfort thing to a lot of people to know that things are certain ways. I think that's why people buy certain caskets, or they do certain things, or, people will comment, well, why would you spend this? And it's like, sometimes people just feel the need to spend something. Like, that person was a certain person to them and they want something for them. Why do you buy things for people when they're alive? It's the same reason you buy them for when they're dead. It's just choice. It's preference. It's not because something's better or because it's just what looks nice that you want for them. It's kind of how it is. So
that's true.
So it's interesting you say that, because it does matter to some people. If it looks comfortable and if it is comfortable.
They did, and it was okay. I mean, so it helped me know, but I did have nightmares after that.
Oh no.
Yeah, my mom's like, you shouldn't have done that, but I didn't tell anybody. I snuck up and did it.
Yeah.
And their room was way out of the way, and you had to really try to find the casket room. So that was on 5 years ago. Let's see. The other question was, let's see. I have a guilty pleasure since, we lived and knew about the funeral life. And one of the things that I liked watching on TV, and I was going to ask if you had a guilty pleasure that had to do with your industry. Like, I love 6 Feet Under. Mm-hmm. And it's to think, oh, well, I'm not going to tell anybody that I watched that show. But I must admit, I mean, it was wonderful. And I thought, I wish my father had been here with me so we could watch that together. I had that fantasy part to it where they had the people talking to them that were dead. But it was a very good show. But do you have any pleasures or a book that you've read from the industry that was like, wow, I really like that?
It would be more show-wise because I don't read many books about the industry just because I live it. 6 Feet Under was really good. I've only watched the whole series once, and it was kind of to do just so I had done it. But it was probably the best ending to a show series I have ever seen, like bar none. It was phenomenal. I am more interested in things that are kind of to do with it, like dead bodies and such, but more like the TV show Bones. Like that is a TV show I've probably watched every episode 20 times, and it's just something that is, I like to have noise going. I like 2 things going on at once. It distracts my mind so I can't be thinking about other things I have to be doing. So I'll turn that on while I'm doing something, or, I always have it running. But that's a show that I don't think I'll ever lose interest in because it fascinates me. And, there's the relationship side of it, but I also like the death and the study and the forensics and things. And I've always had an interest in forensic anthropology. So I think some of the areas that fascinate me, like the forensics, like the body farm and, those kind of things, I'm more interested in watching shows about or reading books about because they're a little more exciting than I feel like what I do, because what I do is just what I do. So I feel like that stuff is a little more intriguing to me. The mystery, I don't know, we don't encounter that part of it enough at work to, there's not enough crime at work, which I'm not going to complain, but, that part is fascinating. Like when we got a lady in a barrel that they had found a year ago, it was like, oh, I can't wait to see her, and, know why is she in the barrel and what happened and what she look like and what's the story and why doesn't, when she comes to the funeral home, why don't I get a full story? Why don't they send me a written out story of what's going on with the situation? But we don't, we often don't find out a lot of that unless we're involved with that situation. So it's like, man, I wish I could know more to the story. But those kind of
story aspect. Yeah.
Yeah. So right now we're watching Ozarks. We're in the middle of season 2 in Ozarks, and I don't want to give much away, but they have a funeral home. One of the businesses that they end up owning in this thing is a funeral home. And it's so bad how off and cliche they are about tragically bad. And there's one scene I was like, honey, you got to rewind that because I have to take a video second and post that to Instagram. And he's like, don't you just love the smell of embalming fluid or formaldehyde or whatever he said? And I'm like, are you kidding me? It was so bad. And the retort, they cremate somebody and it's like, push the button, it's very dramatic. And then somebody dies. And by the time they have the funeral, 3 days later, they have a fully erected mausoleum with his name engraved, a full mausoleum, not just the headstone, which is usually really off that they have erected, 3 days later at the cemetery for the graveside service. But it was a full mausoleum, and I'm like, really? Like, that doesn't happen. But so I love those kind of things that are so bad that you're like yelling at the TV because it's so wrong, but they don't care. They just, it makes for good TV. But it really makes me it kind of makes me laugh. It kind of makes me mad. It's like, so that's been the new one that I keep hoping for more scenes at the funeral home because they're so bad that they're good.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it's good stuff. But when they did that, and I love the smell. And he like bends down to the guy's neck, or the girl, who was he embalming? I can't remember who, and smells the neck, and it is like, oh, don't you love the smell? And I'm like,
oh my God.
Nobody does that. Nobody, first of all, smells somebody's neck where the flu. No. So it was just, it was really, really cheesy and cliche and hokey. So
that's funny. Is that not like on Netflix or something?
It's on Netflix. Yeah, it's a Netflix original, I think, series. But it's good. It's about like a money laundering family or whatever, and it's fun. It's we like it. It's, good TV. We're also watching 90 Day Fiance. So, we got the really trashy, and then we've got the fun, drama, crime.
Yeah, you're right.
Thing. You never know. It depends what you're in the mood for, which, how heavy of viewing you want to have.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's very true. Let's see. I've asked all my 3 questions. Of course, I could come.
Yeah, do you want a bonus one? Do you want to throw a bonus question in?
Let's see here. Well, I had one. Well, I've actually got 3. I'm trying to figure out. Well, this is something I noticed, and I don't know if you've noticed, but I know that you've done your story about your niece, and that was so moving. Bless your heart. My heart just goes out to you. And I've noticed when people die, this is, and all the people that I've seen in all my life, you look at them, and of course, they did. And then I had a friend, well, she wasn't really a friend, acquaintance from high school. She was several years behind me in my sister's grade. Her husband killed her, then he killed himself. And, it was really tragic how it happened. I mean, he broke into her house, chased her around, killed her. Oh. And so we all went to the wake, and they had her casket open. And I felt like when I looked at her, I felt that she looked troubled because she had been murdered. I ask you, and I hate this because you've had a murder in your life with your niece. She was a child, so she might have looked different. But do you find that sometimes people that are murdered don't look at peace, and some people do look at peace?
That's a good question. I'm thinking back now, and like the people I've cared for, some of them that have been murdered, and the looks on their faces.
There's something behind the eyes. I can't say, her eyes were closed. That's something I could sense.
I don't think so. Like, I don't think there's a different look to their face. I mean, if I wanted to see something different, I probably could, but I don't really think there is. There is a feeling, though, when you're caring for somebody that's been murdered and like you said, unsettling. I feel like that's with you, that you just, I want to take care of them a little more. I want to do more for them. I am really, like, it stays with you, and it's just heavy because you look at this body and you know that before their death, they were scared and they were frightened and there was pain, and what could they have been going through and how horrible. And you take it on, and I think you put yourself in the mental more than you would with anybody else, because you cannot, it's hard to help not do that and to think about what they went through. Especially, there's a couple, they were raped and they were murdered, and they you know, it was not quick. It was, you know, they knew it was happening, and it, you know, thankfully my niece, she was asleep, and he, you know, killed her in her sleep. So she didn't know the pain at the end, and it was quick. And I'm thankful for that they're, you know, she was shot and he didn't, you know, strangle her or stab her to death or do something where there was all this fear involved. Because to me, that's, you know, an added thing. You know it's happening and you can't stop, and you just want to cry out. And the things you must think during those moments, are you flashing back to people? Are you thinking of your kids? Are you thinking of your mom and your dad? And are you wondering why nobody's helping you? Are you, you know, all those things, and I think about those, and it's terrible, but it just makes me want to take care of that person and protect them. And so taking care of them, I just want to guard them and protect them. And I think those are the situations that if the media comes around, I am a very different version of myself as a funeral director, because I get super protective and super defensive for that family, because the media sometimes can get too pushy and too invasive. And so I definitely want to protect that person and that family more so than anybody else, usually, because they've been through too much and that person's been through too much. So
right. Yeah, great answers. That one was probably the toughest.
Yeah. And you have me thinking now, and I don't think there's any different. Like, they're just, people are gone when they're in front of you.
Right.
Like, they're just gone, and it's a hard thing to convey, but there's just nothing about them and who they were as a personality that's there. It's just the shell that we're caring for. And you know, even with my niece, and that's why I think I believe that so wholeheartedly, is caring for people I know and caring for their bodies. Like, they are just not there at all. And so I think that's one of the reasons, like, I'm very detached from, you know, when you're caring for somebody I know, because I know they're absent from there. And so it's hard to let go and to grieve in that normal, you know, kind of go through those steps when it's a reality pretty quickly that they're not there. And I have to know it super quick because I'm caring for them. And so it's a very different vantage point than other people who are just walking in and seeing them in a casket and, you know, going through those regular, I guess, motions as opposed to what we do. So, yeah.
Thank you for answering that. That was
of course. Yeah, of course. No, I feel it's therapeutic, all of that, to talk about, because we don't, as funeral directors, get to process things in a different, you know, in the way that most people do. And so I think the more we talk about certain situations we encounter and things we do, it's almost like therapy for us to process through and to kind of help, you know, our bodies, I don't know, churn those emotions and get them where they need to be more, because we have to repress a lot and not move through them like other people, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, I would say so, because of the amount of, well, it's your job every day, all the time, that goes on. And
right.
My father, I think he would repress things. We would talk, and you know, he would get things out, but I think he was sometimes bothered by things. And you know, I guess sometimes they talk amongst themselves, you know. Yeah. Because it's a unique kind of industry to be in, and it takes very special people. You're very special. And
thank you.
Yes, and I appreciate the people in this industry, and people just don't think about it. You know, they're praying for, you know, with this COVID thing, you know, I put it on Facebook. I said, please remember the people in the funeral industry, because that, you know, people don't think about that. I guess because it's one of those things that you just want to gloss over and, you know, not think about it. But it's very, and you guys have to deal with that. And
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I appreciate that. Well, thank you for bringing questions to the table today. These were great. I love that your vantage point in having that relationship with the business through your dad, and gives you definitely a different perspective.
Truly.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, thanks everybody for joining us with Michelle in Maryland. It's a little alliteration there with Michelle in Maryland. Watch us on our next video in the series and see what state we are in next with a viewer. Bye, everyone.